Hello, my name is Heinz and I work on Tremor and Wayfair. So Wayfair produces a lot of logs. Logs are pretty much just a computer saying, hey, I did something or something happened. And Wayfair produces a lot of them, like a few terabytes a day. And then since we are a retail shop, we don't have the same amount of events every time of day because people only shop at certain times, right? Sometimes they sleep and don't need no couches during their sleep, or rugs, or even pillows. So the number of those events does fluctuate heavily. And then we have events like Cyber 5 or Way Day, in which they are even more extreme in these fluctuations. A log message more or less directly translates to a certain amount of resource requirements. So 1,000 log messages need 1,000 times those resources. 1 million need 1 million times. So if we have a significant grow in log messages during a time of day or during an event, we also need significantly more resources. And now comes the business versus technical part a bit. The technical part is, well, let's just get more resources then, shall we? The business part is, it makes absolutely no sense if we have like an order of magnitude more logs during a few hours to pay an order of magnitude more for resources through a whole year. So far, that makes perfect sense. What the result of that was in the past is that our network's operations center, so the people who ultimately make sure that everything works and look at the events, look at the errors, and try to get everyone involved if something blows up. When you're running out of resources, they will see things delayed. So they will see, oh my God, this system is on fire after it burned down already. And the fire spread, which is kind of bad because then they look there and there's nothing there. Because now there are 5 different fires they only see 10 minutes later. Now, and this is something which is very specific to logs. It is more important to see that something goes wrong than see everything. Because the characteristic here is that a log that is catastrophically wrong will repeat. You have a cascading effect. If something goes wrong, it goes wrong more than once. The cross example is for Wayfair as a company, it's not that important if a specific customer can buy their couch today. Yes, it is a negative experience for that one customer, but the importance of every customer can't buy a couch is far bigger, the impact of that. So it is more important that we always see if something is really wrong than that we ensure that we see every single thing that's wrong. So we can just ignore a part of the logs, and the important ones will tickle up. If all the important fires are put out, then we'll see the small fires. But it's more important to put out the large fires than the small ones. So what we did with Tremor originally was taking this observation and literally just throwing logs away. We look at what the system we sent them to can sustain. And when we notice the system is getting to its limits, we just start throwing some away. That sounds scary and, oh my God, does this work? But the reality is it works. I mean, we have a few Cyber 5s and a few Way Days below our belt now that prove this approach was the right one, or at least good enough from a business perspective. And there we are again, technical versus business. Technically, it's wrong because you're losing information. But you trade off the loss of information to a better overall experience. It works. So that's how the whole thing started. And we didn't have a system that could handle this before. So that's how we started. And then we added something which is, again, not very technical and comes back to empathy and looking at people. That is user-friendliness. if you do something wrong in Tremor, it tells you in a nice way. For example, if you typo something, it says like, hey, here in the third line of your configuration, this word, I don't know what you mean. Did you mean that other one? Which is super helpful for someone having to deploy and maintain the systems versus a, I don't know, 100-line stack trace of something crashing. Where, yes, it contains the same information, but one has the effort put into it to make it easily digestible for the human having to work with it. And from there we grow. We made it fast. We made it, well, kind of resilient. I don't think it ever crashed in production yet, which big credit goes to the people rolling it out for that, because they tested rigorously before they do so, which, what's the saying, saved our bacon a few times, but it is a good process we established with them. So that keeps everyone happy, and it works. Yes, and by now it does a bit more. It does allow rewriting the data to make more sense out of it. It allows filtering the data and classifying it on importance. So if you look at the logging pipeline from start to end, we plugged in at the very end of it and slowly worked our way to the top of it, at the front of it, to unify the stack of what we're using. So the other people are in the Tremor team. That's Darach, that's Matthias, who joined us just less than a month ago, I believe, and Anoop from Boston. Those are the people currently working on Tremor. And then there are all the people that are using Tremor. Nick, Zubin, God, there are so many. We worked with Santosh. We are working with Ian now. And I think that's a really important part of it, that we involve people really early in the conversation. Like we ask people, what do you think about what we are doing? And I'll paraphrase Darach here. He always says, don't tell us what you like, tell us what you hate. That's a really good sentence and an important question to ask, because if you're building something for another person, it doesn't help you as much to know what they like than to know what they don't like. If you make better what they like, they just like it a little more. But if you find what they hate or what's painful for them, what hurts them, you can, with a small change, make a huge difference for them. Tremor and microservices, there is only a partial overlap. It really, so microservices, one of the big problems with it, it's a very open word, right? Yeah. If you ask 5 people what is a microservice, 5 people will give you different answers. It is easy to see Tremor as a microservice because it is a application that does a thing, period. You deploy it, you talk to it, you can talk to it over an API or on startup or files, and it does one thing and only that thing. So in a sense, it is a microservice, but we don't run it as a service. Then internally, we use something like the actor model, which was made popular largely through Erlang, which we come back to the shirt, to have small parts of the application internally which talk over messages. So we kind of have microservices inside of Tremor again. So this is this turtles all the way down thing, right? Where you have a service which has services, and so on. Wayfair takes a decent approach to microservices, which is not trying to make everything a microservice. And so I think the source of where the whole thing started is microservices started ages ago. But where Wayfair really kicked into that was the platform manifesto. And that very nicely lines out that the goal is not to get everything to a microservice. Not make everything microservice because it's a buzzword. It would be horrible. It would end in a disaster, and that's nothing we need. But I think we have a number of people who have had the same experience that really doesn't work, that microservices are a tool in the toolbox and not the entire toolbox. There's a balance between where does something help and where does it hurt. There's a kind of tension between different needs. The need to be agile and flexible and quick for a person or a team to be able to deploy their stuff without needing to wait for other people, which is totally fine. And then having some kind of consistency inside a large company without 50 different services or 1,000 different services slowly starting to diverge from each other. And a year later, no one knows what the hell is happening in the system. And that happens quicker than you think, or as quick as you think. I don't know what you think. But it can happen scarily quickly that you lose sight of it because you only look at the good parts and ignore the complexity of what it introduces.